So there have been a number of trials done both by our folks and also now all over the country, all over the States, and also all over the world. In the UK, in Brazil, in India, studies looking at, initially, the first question in research is, does this work? Is this a good idea compared to what people are getting already? Because if not, you go no further. So the first studies we did were comparing this approach, mindfulness-based relapse prevention, with standard treatment out there, which is typically 12-step, cognitive behavioral, psychoeducation, that kind of thing. So we did a few trials comparing to sort of the gold standard treatments out there to see, is this as good or better or worse? Should we keep going with this research? And results from those trials did indicate that at least for the majority of the people, this seemed to be helpful in terms of working with craving, working with precipitants of relapse, such as depression or negative affect, and then that then results in more long-term treatment gains. So people could both, we saw a year after finishing treatment, that people who were in the mindfulness-based groups tended to be able to sustain their abstinence longer, as compared to a standard relapse prevention or a 12-step program. And also when they were relapsing or using, it wasn't as severe. So perhaps they would use again and they would relapse, as most people do, but they had the skills to then be able to get back on board faster and not go all the way back to the baseline levels of use. We've also been doing a number of studies trying to understand better both how it works. So we look at mechanisms, okay, if people are getting better, why? What's happening? Are they learning to be with their craving better, or is craving going away, or what's actually happening in the treatment that's helping people get better? And also studies looking at, for whom is this the most helpful? No one treatment is good for every single person. So we want to understand better, who should we be offering this to? Who tends to do well in this and who might need some sort of different kinds of care? So those are the questions we're sort of looking at now, as well as I think the third big question now is how can this be adapted also for different settings, both different cultures and also maybe different formats that might work better in different settings. So right now it's 8-week sessions. You start at week 1 and you go to week 8, but there are many places where that isn't feasible, where it has to be more of a rolling format. So looking at does that work as well as the closed group format? Or what if sessions have to be shorter rather than longer? What if it has to be, a couple weeks versus 8 weeks? These sorts of questions are also things that people are studying. The beginning questions, I think we've got some good, it's hard to say answers, but we have data that support some of the beginning questions, which are, is this, does this work? Is this a good idea? Is it harmful? Is it helpful? And we've done some work now looking at mechanisms. Why is this working? How does it, the way it works, is it similar or different than other therapies? And starting to look at who benefits most from this kind of approach and who may benefit from a different kind of approach. I think that kind of the next question in the research is more kind of adaptation and taking this thing that's been one form, this 8-week process and group, and seeing if it works and how it works and for whom it works. Next, it's how can we adapt this? So some current things that are happening is working with people with comorbid PTSD, very serious trauma histories and addiction. And can we actually bring in more trauma treatment elements so that we can treat both of these and treat the things that keep this comorbidity kind of going? Can we treat those processes? Are there ways that we can bring in more trauma-informed treatment, specifically into MBRP for, let's say, military populations or people with trauma histories? Another up-and-coming and current question that's being asked and answered now is, what other formats can this be useful in? Can we have shorter formats? Can we have rolling groups? Can it be implemented in prisons? Can it be implemented inpatient, outpatient? Can it be useful for people in the very early stages of treatment rather than more the sort of aftercare relapse prevention phases of treatment? There's also some research coming, and I think it'll continue to go in this direction as well in looking, so that's sort of the macro, the bigger question of how can we expand this and implement it, and also looking more micro at how can we look at the mechanisms in a more sophisticated way? So maybe looking at the underlying neural processes that are happening, or maybe looking at physiological processes that are happening. So understanding both kind of microscope in on what's happening here and how can we best understand this, and also zooming out and saying how can we implement this in different settings, different cultures, to different populations. That's where I see the research is headed at this point.